there was the case of the two first sons. A wealthy landowner died, leaving his two sons arguing over who should inherit the estate. Now in Japan, back then, the oldest son gets everything. Nobody else gets anything at all. But the problem was, these two sons were identical twins, and no one knew which one was older. They'd never been told. The mother was long dead. The midwife from the night of the birth was gone. No other family members. No one knew which son was older. Well, they couldn't agree, so the case came up before Olga the judge. He thought perhaps the larger son was older, but found they were the exact same size. So he decided to investigate their characters. He found out that one son was honest and hardworking, and the other a greedy scoundrel. Clearly, one deserved to inherit, and one did not. So he called the two sons to him, and he said, "This is an unusual case. You are both first sons, so we must divide this estate in a fair way. Come back tomorrow, bring with you a handful of dirt, a plank of wood, a gold coin, and a drawing of one of your friends or neighbors." And he dismissed them, leaving everyone wondering what this could mean. The next day, the two sons returned with the objects which they laid on the table. The judge said, "Now, I'll explain. The handful of dirt represents your father's land. The plank of wood symbolizes your father's house. The gold coin stands for your father's wealth. And the drawing of your neighbor represents the goodwill of your friends and neighbors. Now, we must divide this." He turned to one son and said, "You may divide the estate. I promise you it will be awarded." A look of greed passed over that son's face, and everyone knew he had chosen the greedy son. That son went forward, pushed the handful of dirt, the plank of wood, and the gold coin to one side, and the drawing to the other. He said, "Your Honor, I have often heard my brother say that the goodwill of our friends and neighbors is worth more than anything, and of course, I agree with him. Therefore, I'll take the land, the house, and the wealth. My brother can have the goodwill of our friends and neighbors." The judge smiled. "Very clever," he said, "but not clever enough. I asked you to divide the estate, not to award it. That's my job. So I give your brother the land, the house, and the wealth. You may have the goodwill of your friends and neighbors, and you said yourself that that's what was most valuable. So I think you'll agree. It has been a very fair division." This next story is adapted from a telling by Japanese storyteller Hiroko Fujita. It goes like this. Once in Japan, a long time ago, there was a small village, and all the farmers there grew rice. And one year they had such a bountiful harvest, they grew so much rice, the lord of the region was pleased. He decided to reward the farmers of that village and all the surrounding villages. He was going to have a great banquet, a fancy dinner at his castle. Word soon spread. Now, first farmer Ichibei became nervous. He said, "I've never been to a fancy dinner at the castle of the Lord. I'm sure it will be I'm sure you must have special manners, and I don't know how to act." He was so worried, he asked his friend Nihei, second farmer, "Nihei, what do you think about this dinner?" Nihei said, "Oh, I'm so nervous, I'm not even sleeping at night. Let's ask Sanbei," third farmer. Sanbei said, "Why don't we go to Tanaka-san, the head man of the village, and ask his advice?" Tanaka-san said, "Don't worry. I have eaten many meals at the castle of the Lord. I'll tell you exactly what to do. First, you go in and kneel down at long, low tables. The maids will come in carrying trays of food. You'll see on your tray a bowl of rice, a bowl of soup, and smaller dishes of fish and vegetables. First, you must pick up your chopsticks correctly. Pick them up in your right hand, put them in your left hand, take them in your right hand again. Understand?" Ichibei said, Why is it so fancy at home? I just pick up my chopsticks." Tanaka-san said, "All right, now, first you may have a bite of rice, then a sip of soup, then another bite of rice, then another sip of soup, and then you may eat from the smaller dishes of fish and vegetables. All right?" Nihei said, "Why is it so complicated? When I'm at home, I just eat what I want in the order I want." Tanaka-san said, "All right, I tell you what. That night, just watch me do whatever I do, and you'll know you're always doing the correct thing." They agreed this was a good plan. So the night of the banquet came. All the farmers took nice hot baths, and then they put on their underwear. Now, this was a long time ago, and back then, men did not wear underpants like they do now. They wore loincloths, long strips of white cloth which they wound around their waist several times, and the cloth came up between their legs and tucked into their waistbands. Then they put on their nicest, cleanest kimonos. They all had nice new sandals. They were looking good. Well, all the farmers went to the castle. They were all nervous. Nobody knew how to act. They all watched Tanaka-san very carefully. Tanaka-san picked up his chopsticks, and Ichibei said, "Oh, time for the chopsticks." All the farmers picked up their chopsticks. Tanaka-san picked up a bowl of rice and took a bite. Oh, they all took a bite of rice. Then a sip of soup. They all took a sip of soup. And then another bite of rice and another sip of soup. And then Tanaka-san looked at the smaller dishes, and he saw a dish of sweet potato in a sweet and slippery sauce, his favorite. He picked up a piece of sweet potato and raised it to his mouth. But before he could get it to his mouth, it slipped, and he dropped the sweet potato, and it rolled across the floor. Ichibei said, now I must drop my sweet potato. He picked up a sweet potato and dropped it, rolled across the floor. All the farmers nodded. They picked up the sweet potatoes, across the floor. Tanaka-san said, no, don't do that, don't do that. All the farmers watched him, and they all began to wave their hands. Tanaka-san said, oh no, I'm so embarrassed. This is terrible. I must leave. I must run and hide. Where can I hide? I know. I'll run and hide in the storage shed. He got up to run out the door, but as he was running, his loincloth became untied, and it dragged on the floor behind him as he ran towards the door. All the farmers stood up, untied their loincloths, and began running towards the door. They all ran out the door. That was the end of the feast.